Holler, welcome back. It's great to have you here. Really appreciate you tuning in. It's March. Well, it's just about March. It's last week of February, but you know, you got to film these things right in advance. This year has me a little more concerned than most years, but of course I get concerned about everything. But why am I concerned? Well, we've had some wacky weather. I mean, really wacky weather. We're in the 60s and 70s for 3 or 4 days. The bees are actually bringing in pollen in late February, which is freaking me out a little bit. I know it can't be a whole lot, but they're bringing in pollen. And then, boom, we're down in the teens and low 30s for 4 or 5 days. And then, boom, it's back up again. So the bees are really going back and forth, and that's a challenge for them. It's a challenge for us. I'm telling you, I've had it with this weather, but the challenge is that the bees are building, and I know they're building, and that's the other issue that I've got going on, is that I know it doesn't sound like it should be a bad thing, but it is. My bees are busting. I went into winter with 23 hives. I still have 23 hives. I'd say almost every one of them I've been in to take a peek. We're talking at a minimum 6 frames. I've got some that are at 7 and even 8 frames. And that's just crazy at this time of year. I do attribute part of that to, well, they went to bed strong, lots of feed, they were heavy, they were happy. I'm a big fan of Hive Alive. Not sponsored by them, but I will tell you I'm a big fan of using Hive Alive in their fall feed. In fact, I even mix it in with my candy board, just a little bit of a supplement. And I think that that really helps the bees' gut health and just overall health. March is a challenge when you've got, early March is a challenge when you've got so many bees in a hive and you should be just building. So things are going to be a little bit ahead of the schedule. But here's an important thing that I want to add. It is 2026. You could be seeing this in 27, 28, 29, 30, I don't know. I mean, until, you know, YouTube goes away or the interverse or whatever, I don't know. But this year is an off, different sort of year. There's a lot of times where our March and even into April are just crazy cold. And I think it was 2 years ago, I couldn't even get into the hives until the end of the second week of April. And we had snow on the ground. Every year is different. This year it's March 2026. They're just busting. So what am I going to do this month? Well, a lot of it depends on weather. If you look at AccuWeather or the Farmer's Almanac, which, you know, I mean, boy, that's just kind of like getting all of your medical advice from WebMD, right? But it's something to kind of go on a little bit. They're all saying we're going to have an early spring. We will see. I'm going to prepare for that and be ready if it's not. I'd rather be prepared and do it than not. So what do we have going this time around? I still have a ton of tasks to do. So in March, for us in this area, and let me go back and say again, and I've said it before, but just so if you're first time tuning in, I am just outside of St. Louis, Missouri. So you've got to look at that parallel and maybe 100 miles either way, although you can get a lot of variance between what would be 200 miles. But just judge what I'm saying based upon where I'm at. If you're in the South or you're up in the Yukon, everything I'm saying for March is out the door because you guys are doing it completely different. So I'm really heading toward those people that are kind of along that parallel here in mostly the United States, maybe a little bit here in Europe. Daytime temperatures in the 50s and 60s, nighttime temperatures down around 35 or 40. Keep that in mind. So what do I do? It's like you got to get on top of your equipment if you're not. I've been building. Still had a hive stand to build in February. Of course, that didn't happen. So I've still got a hive stand that I want to build. It's one of those projects, it's a nice to have, not a need to have, because I've got cement blocks and I can just toss up a hive stand someplace if I need to. But I really like these hive stands and I want to be able to show you that in a video. I have to finish installing these 9-frame spacers. I did a video on -1 last spring, maybe early last summer. I love -1 configurations. And in that video, I said, you know, you just put them in and then just kind of eyeball them. It's like, well, I had several people go, seriously, eyeball them? I'm like, oh, yeah, I can make that happen. Well, here's what I discovered. I'm all wrong in that. I'm going to have to go back to that video and in the comments say, don't eyeball. Get a spacer tool, or I found these and love them, I think. but they are spacers, and I will be installing these spacers into, I've got 10 brand new boxes, and I'm going to use them in that, and I've got enough spacers for another 10 boxes, which brings me to the next, and that's I need to go out and scrape supers. Most of my supers are on the hives right now, which is kind of a challenge, but I do have at least 10 supers out in my shed. I'm going to scrape those supers down, get them ready, and I'm going to put spacers in those. I've got enough for 20 hives. I love the -1 configuration. If you watch that video, it'll tell you why. But just in a nutshell, you can kind of see how these are spaced out. And instead of right next to each other, there's a little more space. If you use a frame that is already drawn comb, the bees will build out to bee space. And bee space is it 3/8 of an inch? If I'm wrong, tell me down in the comments. I'm sure you will, but thank you, appreciate it. So the bees will build out the comb. What that means is when I pull that frame out, the comb is not built just to this edge, which means it sometimes can be hard to scrape, you gotta pick, but they're built out much thicker. So you've got what I call, and actually I think Jane Sumi called it over at Isby's, you got meat on the bone. It does a couple quick things. I don't want to get too far into this, you can watch the video, but what it does is it actually gives you a little bit more honey per hive because you have the space of one less frame in there and the bees are building out enough to fill that space. So you really get about 3 to 5 pounds more per box, and you're only extracting off of 9 frames. The other really cool thing it does for you is it gives you a lot of wax. So if you're making wax products or you just need wax, you're gonna get a ton of wax. Okay, enough of that. Sorry, down that rabbit hole, but I'm excited about it. Scrape supers, and I have to organize my whole Nook box system. I still have a little bit of some clamps to put on the Nook box system. I did that video last spring. I'm talking about the Nook box system I've got, and boy, it worked great this last year. Several videos you'll see that I used those in, and the system really worked great, and I'm going to be able to implement that even more this year. Then what? Well, next thing, well, it's like next week, I'm putting on pollen patties, so next week I want to check those. Make sure that, number one, I'm not getting hive beetle larvae in it. I mean, it's like that fast. But I only put a small amount on. So, I just keep checking that about once a week. It's on top of the candy board, so I'm not interrupting the hive. I want to do a drone check. If she's laying drone eggs and I've got capped drone brood, then I can start doing the math as to about what time that we've got drones and they're looking to mate. So again, things are so far ahead of themselves. I'm really concerned about swarming this year. And we'll talk about that in just a second. Again, the next week I'm going to talk about pollen patties. Then the week of the 15th, it's really quite possible that on a few of the hives, I will be putting some honey supers on. For 2 reasons. One, they're going to be busting for space on the biggest hives. That gives me a little bit more space. Plus, it also starts to prep the hive for me to Demaree those hives. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. So the week of the 15th, which may also, if things progress as they seem to, and I'm starting to see red maple come in, and other spring flowers, even dandelions. I'm starting to see some dandelions getting ready to bloom. Then I might be able to pull the candy boards and put supers on. So I can't put supers on while I got candy boards or feed or anything else, because then you're just basically getting sugar honey and you can't sell that. Then the next week, I'm really in between because again, it's so fast. I may be doing my first mite check. I'm more than likely in about a week or even less. I'm going to pull some of my West beetle trays. That's what I've got closing off the hives right now. I'm going to put sticky boards in just to kind of get a read of what's going on inside the hive before I do a full mite check, which probably is going to be either the week of the 15th or the week of the 22nd. I guess my left-handedness got in the way there. Now it looks like 32nd. Just go with it, huh? So Be doing mic check, and I'm more than likely going to be doing double screens on a couple of hives. Hive I manage. It's that rogue hive that you probably saw back, I don't know how long ago, that hadn't been checked in a long time. 100 pounds of honey off that thing. Just insane. But I'm thinking I'm going to double screen them, just split them into two, and help them out, take a little bit more honey for myself. Then the next week, I am probably going to start my Demaree on most of my hives, or not most of my hives. I'm going to start the Demaree on the hives that have somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 or 8 frames. Really, you can start Demareeing the hives when you've got 6 frames on. My sandal came off, my foot's cold, I don't know, sorry about that break. So I'm going to start the Demaree. It's a busy month. What we did last month played into what we did this month, and it all plays into, really for me, honey production. And a lot of this, of what I'm doing, is to prevent swarming, if at all possible, because when a third to half your bees, and a lot of them, foragers, leave the hive, there goes half my honey production. And my commitments this year are huge, so I need all the honey I can get, and that means for me doing whatever I can to keep those bees in the hive. Is there a panic in my voice? There should be a little panic in my voice, because it's just going to be one of those. So that's what we got right now. I'm just going through my list to see if I talked about everything I'm supposed to talk about, and it looks like I did. So without any further ado, that's March, and if you've got any questions, please leave them down in the comments. If there's something you do in your area, you're kind of similar, you want to add that in the comments. But mostly just appreciate you watching. I really do appreciate it. If you would, it's nice to be liked, so hit that like button. And as always, happy beekeeping. We'll see you next time.